Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
So today we're talking about plant and equipment and M&E in general, really, and how it's affected in and around asbestos, not necessarily removal, not necessarily surveys, but a bit of everything.
Yeah, things to consider.
Yeah, just consideration.
When you're thinking about either surveys or removal works or managing your premises with relation to asbestos, all encompassing.
Let's take a boiler, a decent sized boiler in a boiler room.
Yes, I suppose you can start at the top of what asbestos could do in boilers and plant equipment within a boiler. If you think about it, boiler rooms, plant rooms are historically full of asbestos.
Yeah, that's the places where a lot of asbestos was used.
Yeah, predominantly on the pipework, etc. But the actual boilers and plant equipment themselves were lagged, insulated with asbestos, but also installed and manufactured with asbestos in them.
Yeah, exactly. That rope seals in boilers, gaskets that contain asbestos. These were actually, like you say, manufactured at factory level and installed at the factory and then shipped out to site to be installed.
Yeah.
So like on the smaller boilers, definitely you'd have gaskets and things like that.
Yeah.
On the bigger ones, they were probably manufactured in a factory, but then put together on site with the equipment and the materials that they were sent out from the factory with, which would be like the big rope seals and things like that.
Yeah, and particularly like with regards to gaskets, they would have been used, really late on into getting towards the prohibition of asbestos. So they were probably one of the last things to sort of go. And also, where gaskets have been changed. And we've seen this where you've got modern boilers.
Yeah, stuff that's built post 2000.
And they've stuck old gaskets on them as replacements.
Yeah, because essentially, yes, things move on, but not as quickly as we perhaps like. And
they kind of standard sizes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A standard size of a piece of pipe, a pipe flange, that kind of thing. And essentially, a gasket is just a gasket. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't matter whether it's an asbestos one or not. And for that reason, they get to live on, or they did get to live on in the back of maintenance workers and plumbers and things like that in the back of their vans. Because it's like, well, I've got a shed load of them, I'm going to carry them.
Yeah, it's handy spares, isn't it, that are sort of carried over. But kind of what we want to cover today is, with them being live and operational and in use, what are the issues around that? And so obviously, with them being in use and being live, it does create a bit of an issue initially to identify them.
Yeah, to find out what you've actually got. So if you think of it from a surveying point of view, you've got a surveyor going into, like I say, let's call it a boiler room. So in a boiler room, you're going to have a boiler, water pipes, electrics. They're the kind of standard things in a boiler room, right? Yeah. So as a surveyor, well, the only way I can tell you what's in any of those is to have them turned off. Because you can have a best guess at it and put a presumed sample in and things like that, and use your knowledge and experience of identifying, well, this system is the same as a system I've seen previously that I know had asbestos in, which does add weight to your presumed sample. And as a good surveyor would add those kind of things in his comments as well. But to truly and fully identify whether you've got asbestos within a boiler, within electrics, within the water tank, well, the only way to do it and to access it safely is to have them turned off. In the grand scheme, it doesn't sound, it's like, well, just turn it off then.
Yeah.
But a lot of sites can't do that.
Yeah, and particularly it's not just a case of the surveyor turning the elements off. It needs a competent engineer, whether that be electrical, plant, mechanical, to isolate it safely, and also maybe open it up for them as well.
Definitely, and that's it. I mean, the modern or more modern boilers they're essentially, I mean, the old boilers just used to be big lumps of metal that were caked in asbestos, and inside that asbestos was the kind of the wrought iron boiler material that also had asbestos wedged in between, and it had asbestos in the door, and it had asbestos on the feet and everything. It was just all bloody asbestos, right? Whereas the modern ones, they're encased a case material, which is usually a metal material. It's usually got acoustic lining on, and they fit together a certain way. And like you say, as an asbestos surveyor, I wouldn't go and start taking it apart because I haven't got a clue. Yeah. Because I'm not a boiler engineer. So that's the thing, that you would need to have a competent boiler engineer on site to assist you with, like you say, 1, turning it off, 2, taking it apart safely. And then if it's just a survey that's being taken apart and going back together, thirdly, people just think, putting a boiler on is just, you just turn it on, flick a switch, you're away. Yeah. Some of the boilers have really complicated recommissioning processes. It's like turn knobs for so many seconds, flick this switch, go back, this, that, the other, stand on one leg.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you've got, particularly with boilers, you've got multiple services into them, yeah, mostly gas, electric. So there's quite
Stuff
a few
you
elements.
don't want to play with.
Yeah, there's quite a few elements to sort of mess with, and asbestos surveyors are not competent to obviously do that. So that's definitely something to think of, and how, like you said, getting those items not just switched off but turned back on is really important. Obviously for you, it's not so much if it's a demo site, it's quite simple. Just get it all decommissioned. Usually that's just a case of cutting the gas and electrical supply outside the building and cracking on. And sometimes it will probably need draining down, degassing, et cetera, et cetera. So there's quite a bit that goes into that from the survey point of view. But also, additionally to that, if you're thinking about removals, what else do we need to think about is, can they be switched off?
Yeah.
Can they be isolated?
Well, that's what I was going to say. So kind of before we get to that one, it's like, if you're doing a survey and you need to find out whether something's asbestos or not, it's not just, it's also, you need to consider, and this will be, again, a question for the engineer. Yeah. If I turn it off, will it come back on? Right? Because there's some systems.
You're right. You are right. It's like, this is
it's an
50
ancient,
years old. We turn it off and come back on again.
Exactly. There's just no, I just know.
Yeah, we've had it.
Yeah, we know that from experience of, you turn it off, even if it's for an hour, it's like, well, whatever it is that gets the boiler going again is not going to get going.
That back again. Yeah. And also, can you actually switch it off?
Yes.
With particular occupant sensitive areas like, care homes, hospitals, even schools. Mm-hmm. We can't switch the boiler off. Can't have cold buildings.
You can't bin it off.
24/7. There's people in there all the time.
Exactly. The boiler, and that's the thing. The boiler's doing the job. Heating, hot water, anything else that it's servicing and running. And you can't just simply switch it off for a couple of hours and think that'll be all right. Because, like you say, that then makes whatever that is feeding inoperable, which makes, whoever uses those facilities in those areas, it means that they're inoperable and they can't do whatever they're doing.
Yeah. I think there's always a solution for something, isn't there?
Yeah.
It can always be worked out. The problem is people don't tend to think about these issues, do they? And there is costs, ramifications off the back of it, isn't there?
Definitely.
If you've got asbestos in these areas and they need to be remediated, these are the things you kind of need to consider. Yeah. It's not just the actual asbestos works, it's the knock-on works or the knock-on scenarios, either shutting their boiler room down and we need temporary supplies in, or moving everyone out in that time period to do the works.
Exactly.
There's additional costs associated indirectly for that.
Yeah, so there's definitely solutions that you can look at, and one would be, well, it can't be turned off. Can we look at hot works? Well, yes, you can, but hot works a no-no wherever possible because of the implications for the people that are carrying out those works. Yeah. It's not safe. It's not a safe environment.
Yeah, because you might walk into the boiler room when it's fully, all the pipes are fully insulated and it's hot.
Yeah.
As soon as you start taking that insulation
Oh my
off,
word, it's roasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say, you walk into a boiler room when it's running and you're like, oh, it's a little bit warm in here.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, but it'll be okay. The guys can work in this. Yeah. And like you say, you take the...
and you don't know until you take all that,
how much heat it's kicking out.
Exactly. You can have a good indication of, okay, we think it's going to be this, but until you actually do it, you're never going to know. And that can be too late.
Yeah, it can be, and it can be past the point of what you thought was okay. So if you thought, well, we're going to get air conditioned units blowing in cold air and creating a cooler environment, that's fine. But like you say, if you've miscalculated it, well, you've suddenly got an asbestos enclosure. You've got all the jackets off the pipeworks and the boilers. It's bloody roasting. It's like 50 degrees or whatever it is. Your aircon units are not cutting the mustard. Yeah. You're kind of left just going, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah, and then you're into the game of, you can only work a certain amount of times in these hot areas. You could end up with doubling, tripling, quadrupling the time frame of the project.
Definitely.
So where you thought you were saving a bit ends up, spending more.
Yeah.
In calculating, okay, we could have just shut the boilers off, got temporary fix in there, versus now the job's run over 6 months.
Yeah, and another issue with it, even if you can work around that, it's things like airflow. Boilers need airflow to run and to run safely. If you look at any boiler room, there's big vents in the wall to manage that airflow to ensure that kind of temperature's regulated inside and it's using and can claw enough air in that it needs to.
Yeah, what you mean by that is if you're building an enclosure within a plant and boiler room, it's sheeting the boilers out, isn't it? So
yeah, you're blocking access.
Yeah, you're basically creating a vacuum around the boilers to protect them from the asbestos works.
Yeah,
but in doing so, you're
killing the boilers.
You're sealing them up.
Yeah, and that's it. It can have massive implications, not just on it's not running as efficiently, so it'll cost us a few more quid. It could kill the boilers. Yeah, that's the thing. It can break them. So like you said earlier, there are other options, which can be decanting people from said building or said area so that then those boilers can be turned off.
That's probably the cheapest if you've got the luxury of the space.
The space, yeah.
If you can, shift people out into different areas of your
other
site.
Offices, or you get some mobile offices delivered to site.
Or work from home temporarily, if that's an option.
Yeah. That sounds like a ball ache, and mind you, that is still a ball ache. If you're a business that don't work from home, if you're a business that everybody comes in and uses their desk PCs and the office phone system, getting everyone to work from home is a pain. Getting everybody moved office is a pain. Getting everybody to mobile outside is a pain. Yeah. Because you've got all the IT and the phone issues to consider.
Yeah, 100%. And it definitely don't work if you're a hospital or a school or something like that.
No, exactly.
Kids work from home.
The kids work from home.
Yeah, you're having an operation at home. It doesn't work, does it? So that's not always a given.
A viable one, no.
So the next one on that is putting temporary boilers in.
Yeah.
Creating a temporary boiler house on site. But again, you've got to have the room.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
Because these are big old bits of, they get basically lorried in, don't they?
Yeah, big old bits of kit. It depends on the requirements. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about a few small little school boilers in their boiler room, it's easier to do. It's still a ball ache, don't get me wrong, but it is easier to do and more manageable. But like you said, a hospital. I mean, in the hospitals or factories, things like that, you've got huge, and I'm talking massive boilers, like the size of a lorry that is the size of a boiler. They're just massive, massive bits of kit. And to kind of replace that, sometimes you can't even get the power delivered. Like you say,
you need to. That's a very good point. You actually have to get
a new one,
new electrics, like cabled in from a substation to power these things. Which is unbelievable. And that's obviously cost time, money. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And that's just what I wanted to highlight, just the things going back to the surveying, to give you the full information needs careful consideration and planning, because you need the right people on board as well as the asbestos surveyor. And then moving on from that to the removals, if you have got asbestos, then it doesn't need remediating. The best will in the world, it's a difficult scenario. When you've got plant and equipment in and around asbestos projects, they do really need careful consideration, because if it goes wrong, it does go wrong in a big way. like you're saying, equipment could get damaged, people could get hurt, but also by raising those issues before and thinking about and considering them, you are going to add pound signs onto that project as well, which again, that's a difficult scenario. With the current climate, people don't have money, especially nobody ever has money for asbestos because it's not the fun part of the project. No. Everybody always has the new IT system and the new smart board and all that stuff priced in, but they never have the asbestos priced in. And then when you add this stuff in on top, it comes as a massive shock.
It's a headache, isn't it? There's little reward comes from dealing with asbestos other than keeping people safe. And, you know, it's really important to consider that. When asbestos was added, you know, it was added at the stage where the building was either constructed from the beginning or added during refurbs or modernisations over the years. And then when it's time for it to come out, it's kind of, you've got the opposite way of it's part demolition, you know, it's part removing these items from the building, which is kind of done in reverse of when the building was constructed. Yeah,
and that's a very good point. And when you think of a construction project, you know, nothing's ever thrown up overnight, is it?
No, and what you know, the sort of principle of building the building is, you know, you start with the foundations, then you build the walls, the roof, and then you start putting the internal elements on it, and then you start putting the electrics in, the services. That needs to come out that way as well. You know, if you've got to take a wall out, you need to think about taking the services and electrics out first in that area before you can take the wall out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of doing that in reverse as the construction of it in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we wanted to highlight, just the issues in and around it. And I suppose if you've got a project coming up and your asbestos consultant hasn't considered these implications, or your asbestos contractor hasn't considered these implications or hasn't mentioned them to you,
they need to be ironed out, don't they?
They do. And I would be asking the question about, well, okay, yeah, great, you're going to remove X, Y, and Z. Well, how is that not going to affect the boiler, the heating, the pipework, the electrics, and so on and so forth?
The job being completed safely.
Yeah, and that's it.
For the operatives.
And that's the thing, right? You want it. I mean, I don't know, you could be the meanest man on the planet, meanest woman on the planet that doesn't care if the contractors hurt themselves doing the job for you. However, I would say that even if you didn't care with that, what you would care about would be the reputational damage that comes back to bite you if somebody is injured as part of works on your site. So even if you've got no moral compass whatsoever and you don't kind of care about, oh, well, I don't care, that they can just get it done. And like I say, you've got to think the worst case scenario. And it sounds, I don't know, it sounds dramatic to a point, but then it's because I've seen elements and seen what happens and seen people go through the ringer of stuff going wrong. And that's ultimately what I suppose I'm trying to say is you need to consider these things because it will come back to bite you either by directly or indirectly. And as part of a decent project team, these are the kind of things, they're awkward conversations to have because you might have, I don't know, 100 grand to do a job. And by the time you've added all these other bits in, talking about getting a new boiler in, new temporary electrics, it might be another 100 grand. So you now talking about 200 grand job and you've got 100 grand budget, which might mean you have to go back to the board or to the trust to say, please, can we have more money? Because, well, that budget that I gave you just isn't cutting the mustard. But I would personally rather have these conversations and get it all out in the open. And like I say, if your asbestos consultant or contractor isn't doing that, I would be questioning whether you are actually going to end up with the project that you wanted completing anyway.
Yep. Happy days.
All right. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that one. Remember, asbestos first, not last.